Hi, I'm John Feldt, and this is the weekly water outlook for the area of Texas and surrounding states for January 13th, 2013. Well, there was some welcome rain around the state last week. Actually, I was in Austin, Texas early last week, and I know there's quite a bit of rain there. And you can see here the yellow shaded area received from 2 to 4 inches of rain. So pretty significant rain in this area right in here. Anywhere from 2 to actually this red here, you see this area of red right here and some pockets of red, that was nearing 5 inches. So that was the most significant rain that we've seen for quite some time. Actually, even back in here in the western part of the state, the green is not as much, and into Oklahoma, an inch or so, anywhere from a half inch to a little bit over an inch. So it was a significant rain over most of the state. The only area that really didn't receive any rain or light amounts of rain was in blue, but you see the entire state was covered by at least some rainfall last week. Now, if I look at percent of normal here, what you see is that been quite a while since we've seen the entire region, at least most of Oklahoma, almost all of Texas, almost all of Arkansas. Now, Arkansas has been wet, but almost all of Texas, large parts of Oklahoma, in that blue or purple, which is indicating above normal precipitation for the entire week. I will be mentioning snow. I know there's not any snow in the area over the last week, but there was some light amounts of snow over the northern tier. And I guess if you like snow, you can say, boy, I wish some of that was down in our area. But for the most part, it's been very quiet. The area that brushed parts of Oklahoma here, this is some new snow, and this little axis right in here over the last week. Some light flurries over in the colder air, but for the most part you can see that where the snow depth and the snow coverage is right now, and it's about 44.6% of the nation's covered with snow. You might remember the year started with about 60% of the nation covered, which was a record at that time, but as you might expect, it's come back down into more of a normal range at the current time. Now, because of the recent rain, there's been pretty significant improvement of soil moisture over parts of Texas, and actually Oklahoma as well. But Oklahoma, you might recall, was much drier going into the winter months, much more drought impacts. But you see now that we have this area of white, and that's saying that soil moisture is back up to pretty much close to normal over parts of Texas now due to that recent rainfall. So it was a very welcome rainfall. Now, when I talk about drought impacts, there are short-term drought impacts, and that can be the very upper soil moisture, and there are longer-term drought impacts, and that might be stream flow and reservoir levels. So keep in mind that just because I say that there's been some improvement in upper soil moisture, I'm not saying that the drought impacts have ended by any means. Matter of fact, if you look into Oklahoma, you still see very significant soil moisture deficits in large parts of Oklahoma. So when we look at the stream flow around the area, stream flow can take a little bit longer to respond because when it gets significant rain, it's going to recharge upper soils before you start seeing that runoff into rivers. So here you do see that much below normal stream flow over parts of Texas and Oklahoma. Eastern parts of Texas, most of Arkansas is still near normal. Kansas, you get into that core of dry conditions, and Kansas is still well below normal as far as stream flow goes. Here's the latest drought monitor, and I think the point I want to make here when we look at impacts, I've sort of put a dashed line there around the area that received the most rain, and that's the area that is really has seen some significant improvement in drought impacts due to the rainfall over the last week. So the rain came at a good time. It was fairly widespread. We can definitely have used more rain over Oklahoma and western Texas, but at least there was some significant rain over most of the state. So let's review teleconnections, because I'm going to be talking about a significant trend for the region that's going to continue through the rest of January. This is the Arctic Oscillation, and it's been going back and forth over the winter months. What we had was a positive Arctic Oscillation. It's sharply dipped back into negative, and now for the rest of the month it looks like it's going to come back up. It's not going to be quite so negative, and it could be slightly on the negative side is the most likely outcome. I'd like to talk about another teleconnection. This is the Madden-Julian Oscillation, or the MJO. I'm not going to dwell on this real long. It's pretty hard to actually describe, but where the Arctic Oscillation is an oscillation that varies every couple weeks or so, or maybe even more frequently, the MJO is an oscillation that usually lasts 45 to 60 days. And actually, it's very interesting. It transverses the entire globe, and what we see are enhanced amounts of precipitation. And I haven't mentioned this because it's been fairly weak, but the forecast is calling for it to be much more active over the next couple of weeks. And this really strange diagram down here, simply put, if the plot is within this area, it's weak. This is the forecast, and as it gets further out, away from the middle here, it means it's getting more active. So it is getting more active here. This blue line is the forecast, and what it does is these are the 8 different regions that it pushes across. And when it starts getting into this region in here, in the Pacific, that's when it could affect precipitation. So you see that the forecast is starting to get in here fairly strong, and that could have some impact on precipitation. The most significant impact is going to be over the Pacific Northwest and maybe even the Southeast U.S. And this is showing that parts of the Pacific now are getting active. This is enhanced precipitation. Right now, I don't see any impact over Texas or Oklahoma from this other than keeping it dry. But right now, I did want to mention the MJO is something I might talk about from time to time, and I did want to introduce it. Here's the latest feed of moisture. This is a current satellite picture of water vapor. And it's interesting here, I talked about the MJO, and I did want to point out here that when we do get these taps of moisture from the Pacific, it can feed into these systems, and we're getting very heavy rain. This is the higher moisture levels in red. And you can see that when we tap not just low-level Gulf of Mexico moisture, but when we tap the specific moisture, it can move pretty far. And you can see here how far this is now tapped and is feeding the heavy precipitation off to our east right now. But that is something that occasionally will produce very heavy rainfall. Okay, now I want to talk about the big picture here and run through an animation of the upcoming week and show you what is expected. This is, I'm going to start with the current picture here and sort of go through a loop. And you can see as we get through Sunday into Monday, we have this vortex of cold air up to our north. We have this southerly jet. And the point I want to make is that southerly jet is going to gradually become less and less of an impact over the next couple of days. We have one more week pulse of energy, and the shaded colors here, the yellow and red, are pulses of energy. And then as we get through, this is Wednesday now, look what we see as we get from Wednesday on later. We once again, as that Arctic oscillation, remember I said it's getting back to neutral, it lifts this jet stream up to the north, and it holds the cold air well to our north, keeps all the action well to our north as well. Look out here out to the west or southwest. Look at the no pulses of energy forecast whatsoever. And if we go a little bit further here, here's Friday. Very benign type pattern. The jet is well to our north. Here's the jet. The energy is well to our north. Very quiet and tranquil pattern over the southwest U.S. And this looks like it will continue for quite some time as we go out into the future. So here's the rainfall forecast for the next 7 days. Basically dry over all of Texas, just about all of Texas, Oklahoma, much of the western and northwest part of Oklahoma, and all of Kansas. And matter of fact, I want to point out that I mentioned at the beginning of my briefing here of a major trend. This goes out all the way through January 29th, a computer model. And I mentioned that the jet stream is going to be very quiet, don't see much energy here, and I think we're heading into another very prolonged dry spell, probably milder temperatures after a while as well. And this is showing the area of parts of Texas, parts of Oklahoma and Kansas, hardly any rain whatsoever now for a prolonged period of time. So I'm going to call this as a major trend here as we get through the rest of January for the most part. If it changes, I'll give you an update, but right now it looks like it's going to be very quiet, and the trend is going to be dry as we get into the middle part of January and probably the end of it as well. So the takeaway point, I wish I could say a whole lot more, but I don't think there's much need to at this point. Significant dry spell as we round out much of January across Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, and probably Arkansas as well. This has been the weekly weather briefing, and I will be updating this again next Sunday. Thank you for listening.